Not so many years ago, I was also a student like yourselves, sitting there at the back in the ranks. And I fell in love with the teaching profession very early, too early in my life. But the reason that I have everything that I hold dear today is because of how it has loved me back. I remember many years ago, I think my teachers flogged us, made us work really hard, and I promised myself that one day I would become so good professionally that my teachers would have to call me back as a chief guest and actually garland me. That was my dream. It is very ironic that today I am here because I think I was the first student to start collecting data for the Women's Study Center even before it was started. I wish to thank my teachers, so many of them here today. That is only because of your genuineness and the fact that you believed in us, not who we were and to where we belonged, but in us as professionals, that perhaps I'm here today. I want to thank the TGI also, that you've given us this opportunity to come and share our experiences with students. Because for any student, it's so important that alumni come back and share their experiences, because that gives you an opportunity to understand what you will be so many years from now. Since it's a morning going into afternoon of books and stories, it's only right that I start with a small story that probably all of you already know about. The story of the tortoise and the hare. Yes, the tortoise won the race the first time, so the hare said, we cannot have it like this. We have to run again. And obviously the hare was not so stupid the second time to go to sleep. But the tortoise had a better plan. He said, we are going to change the route. And this time the route went through the forest, into the river, and then out into the forest again. Both of them ran for about 10 minutes, fast, very fast. Then the hare realized, I will not be able to cross the river. Tortoise thought, I can swim the river, but I cannot run as fast. So they both worked together as a team, and they crossed the river, and they crossed the forest, and they both came out victorious at the other end. I think that is the crux of my work, because I believed in team building. After all the experience that I had gathered in my field work, I set about the task of team building. My work has primarily been with schools and building effective and self-reliant teams of teachers and administrators. Not once or twice, but repeatedly. It was then that I realized that leaders, and after listening to so many of them today, all over had some similarities, no matter which organization they came from. And it was not something they were born with, but something in the environment around them that had taught them to become leaders. Hence, in teaching young children, one has to create these leaders. As women, we have been granted inherent qualities by God, and these should be made into workhorses rather than considering them as weaknesses. Some of these being nurturance and abundance of an ability to love, ability to multitask, and ability to empathize. Similarly, some of the characteristics of successful people, such as motivation, natural curiosity, courage, self-management, enjoying being stretched and rising to a challenge, personal will and fortitude, flexibility may be innate, but there is no doubt that these characteristics can actually be built into people. We educationists need to make sure that we are investing time and energy into developing future generations of women for leadership. There are some universal factors that make a real difference in encouraging young women to reach success. During my college days, I was lucky to have good teachers who treated me like everybody else, in spite of the fact that I came from a privileged family. On a particular day during my master's program, I remember Dr. Saraswati, the then head of department, calling me to her office and giving me a real shout because I had shown helplessness. The blood of great women flowed in my veins, and how had I shown weakness? She said. It was such a stirring talk that it was perhaps the last time that I ever thought that I was going to ever run away from failure or disappointment. Getting the right mentoring at different stages of one's life and career is one of the very important factors for becoming leaders. Travel, as Rosemary said just now, has its advantages too. It brings an invaluable exposure to other cultures and ways of thinking. It is essential for advancement in any profession, even in those that seem local, cloistered or sheltered. This is particularly the case as the world becomes increasingly and globally interdependent, and actions that occur in a place seem far away. The skills that come from living and working in unfamiliar settings are valuable in themselves, and so are the experiences that can be gathered from seeing how other cultures deal with issues. It forces people to think outside the box and challenges them to find and apply solutions beyond their comfort zones. To begin with, all the different placements in hospitals, municipal schools, Bal Bhavans, slums, orphanages, and then my work in the rural areas taught me to accept these contradictory views. Whenever we as a team, when I was working in schools, were faced with a challenge, we found the strength within the team and actually grew stronger. We thought outside the box and often applied solutions beyond others' thinking and surprised them. Once, while working at the Rajkumar College, we were to plan our primary school annual function, and for some reason, the rest of the school was unable to help us. At that point of time, in my team of 40 strong members of staff, we discovered dress designers, choreographers, carpenters, tailors, music maestros, script writers and photographers amongst us. We were a real happening team after that, and whenever there were any functions or dignitary visits, it was always Team Primary that was called to perform. Born in an ancestry that patronized education and higher education at that, it was obvious to leave its mark. Both my grandmothers were very brave women who had seen adverse times and yet fought them majestically. I never remember my grandmother complaining about the changes she had to make and the rights and privileges that she had to forego when the princely states were merged. My maternal grandmother has a record of fighting dacoits in the Chambal at the young age of 80. My aunt, the chancellor of our university, has always encouraged me and been a pillar of strength. I used to watch her battling her own personal problems, but yet exuding such intense love and concern for others' problems. I really think that that's become a family trait with us. Along with my mother's walk and talk, I also inherited her tendency never to give up. Powerful role models like this, I mention these because powerful role models like these help us to think about the kind of people we want to be through examples of kindness, fortitude, courage, bravery, integrity, and other admirable characteristics which are displayed by women and men in everyday lives around us. As a college student, as I traveled back and forth to college, there weren't so many cars at that time, and I was amongst the few who used to go in a car. I used to notice so many women on two-wheelers who used to come to drop their children to school, dash back to complete their household chores, come back again to pick them up, and then maybe go in the evening to again taking them to tuition classes and to hobby classes to give them that extra exposure. I used to find them absolutely marvelous. I used to admire them for the kind of power and the strength they put into those 24 hours which we were all given, and they tried to make a go of their lives. They never once thought that they were middle class. They never thought that they were women, and they never thought of the burdens that were there waiting for them on either side of the scooter ride. It was always the job at hand. These were ordinary people, but they left a mark in me, and somehow watching them, I used to get confidence. If they can do this, why can't I? In his first term as the Chief Minister, Narendra Modi was addressing a group of women in Amreli, and then he asked them how many of them were educated. To his surprise, women above 75 years of age, rather 80 years of age, now it would be 80 years of age, were all educated. Whereas those ranging between the age group of 45, 50 were illiterate. On further questioning, he realized that Amreli belonged to the old Baroda state, and that the then Maharaja, Sir Sayajirao Gaikwad, had levied a penalty. He didn't leave it for free. He had actually levied a penalty for anybody who did not educate their daughter. Getting an inspiration from that, he has started the Kanya Keramni program for educating the girl child, and he gives due respect to the idea. Today, he has put 80% of the ration shops into the hands of women, as well as encouraging Sakhi Mandals. And this is also important because that means we are actually creating entrepreneurs, we are actually creating local leaders. Because a woman who's selling rations in a ration shop will never let another family go hungry. So no matter how much corruption, no matter whatever, she'll at least make sure that some sort of food is sent to every family that is in her area. I mention this because public policy that encourages women to be successful, workplaces that reward those encouraging and advancing women, and education systems that educate women to the highest standards are just some of the things that are needed to help create an environment in which women are prepared and encouraged to rise to leadership. In Gujarat, I think we have a double advantage. Never settling, always being driven, always seeking new experiences. These, I think, are the hallmarks of successful women and men in the world. We must all play a part in helping young women succeed, as our countries, our economies, and our futures depend on their successes. I end with that, with a salute to all the leaders who are present here, in each one of you.